student services at San Bernardino City Unified School District.
The recession hit this community especially hard. Close to 50% of our residents receive some sort of public assistance, and close to 97% of our students are eligible for free and reduced lunch, which means that they're below the poverty line.
One prime example is Juanita Blakely Jones Elementary School, just a block away from the Golden Star Inn. Mitchell says 1 in 5 of the school's students live in motels.
And of course, it causes that school to have a high turnover. They're close to 55% turnover rate over there. So sometimes we'll have kids drop and re-enroll 2 and 3 times in the same school year.
The district provides outreach. There's a homeless student program, counseling, health services, donated clothing and school supplies, and transportation to and from school. But the school system can only do so much.
We can't eliminate some of those real life circumstances that families are going through as it relates to the economy and jobs. So what we just try to do is just try to mitigate the impacts on kids' education, because we believe that the better we can educate the youth will provide a pathway for their families to success.
Yeah, that's your school stuff, huh?
This is a tambourine.
Yeah, can you play that for us?
I don't know how to play any of these.
As for 5-year-old Ian, back at the Golden Star Inn, he's enrolled in an online charter school with a mix of homeschooling and one-on-one lessons with a teacher. Karen says with his behavioral problems, that's exactly what he needs.
And they're real supportive of what we're going through. And they don't have a problem with the fact that we're technically homeless and all that kind of stuff. And his teacher is awesome, so.
I'm curious why you say technically homeless. Are you not just homeless?
No, because I'm not living on the streets. I'm not, I'm not bouncing. I have a roof over my head that's consistent and stable because I make it so. We don't say we're going to the motel room. It's like, okay, come on, buddy, let's go home. Because right now this is home for him.
What are your main concerns for your son at this point?
Getting him back into a home where he has a room of his own, a space of his own, and then getting him through this stuff with my husband, because that's the worst part right now for him. Since my husband left, it's just gone crazy again, and he's really struggling, and he's going to have to do therapy. He's going to have to do therapy because he saw way too much in the last few weeks.
She tries to protect him by keeping him inside the room, which holds 2 beds, a desk, a TV, and a makeshift kitchen that's just a toaster oven on top of a mini fridge. And they go to the park. But it's not home. And they have no idea when they might finally get a real one. This is NPR News.
WNYC is supported by Janovic Paint and Decorating Centers since 1888, with 10 locations in the New York City area offering Benjamin Moore paints. More at Janovic.com, 844-JANOVIC. Janovic, the color authority. WNYC is a media partner for the New York Moth Story Slam, a storytelling competition featuring the theme The Fast Lane, Monday, August 17th at Housing Works. Details at themoth.org.
This summer, whether you're strolling on the High Line or hiking in the Grand Canyon, you won't have to miss a minute of your favorite WNYC shows. With the WNYC mobile app, you can listen to live radio streams and podcasts anywhere, anytime on your mobile phone. There's no need to leave WNYC behind. Download the WNYC app now at wnyc.org/mobile.
This is All Things Considered on 93.9 FM and AM 820, WNYC and WNYC.org. Good evening, I'm Sean Carlson. Animal shelters offered free or reduced cost adoptions yesterday. Tiffany Lacey, the executive director of the Manhattan shelter Animal Haven, says they participated in the national Clear the Shelters event to raise awareness of how many pets need homes.
Pet overpopulation is a huge problem in the United States, and there are so many millions of animals, cats and dogs, in shelters every day that need homes. And so we're having the opportunity to literally clear out the shelters.
The national initiative comes after litters of unwanted cats and dogs born this spring have filled up shelter space. For the rest of tonight, we'll see scattered showers and thunderstorms, mostly before 7 o'clock. It'll be partly cloudy either way tonight, low dropping down about 75 degrees overnight. For tomorrow, Monday, it'll be mostly sunny and hot once again, the high near 93 degrees. By tomorrow night, partly cloudy, low 76. It's 87, partly sunny in Central Park right now. This is WNYC at 520.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from AT&T. With AT&T, the network is on demand, the office is mobile, and the cloud is designed for high security. Learn more at att.com/focus. And Subaru, automotive partner of the National Park Service Centennial. Subaru encourages people to explore America's treasures and discover a national park adventure at findyourpark.com. Love, it's what makes a Subaru a Subaru.
It's All Things Considered from NPR West. I'm Tess Vigland. Civil rights icon and former NAACP chairman Julian Bond has died at the age of 75. Bond passed away Saturday night in Florida after a brief illness. For decades, he was involved in a broad struggle for equal rights. NPR's Sam Sanders has this remembrance.
In 1960, Julian Bond helped co-found the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. SNCC helped bring youth to leadership in the civil rights movement, which at that time was pretty middle-aged. In hindsight, Julian Bond said what SNCC did was, in a way, incredible.
Well, I think our greatest triumph was that we existed at all.
That's Bond in a 2010 interview with NPR's Talk of the Nation.
These young people of college age, some of high school age, put together an organization against the advice of our elders, dropped out of college, many of us against the advice of our parents, created an organization that dared to go into the rural South where resistance to racial justice was at its greatest.
During the same time, Bond became a major protester against the war in Vietnam. In a 1967 interview at Western Washington University, Bond drew parallels between the civil rights movement and the war.
We ought not be there. We ought to disengage ourselves, and that there will never be decent treatment for minority peoples in this country until we begin to concentrate on freedom and justice and equality for those at home and stop worrying about puppet dictatorships and despotic governments in Southeast Asia.
In the midst of all this activism, Bond was elected to the Georgia State House of Representatives in 1965. But white members of the Georgia House refused to seat him. They accused him of disloyalty over his civil rights work and his views on Vietnam. Ultimately, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled they had to let him in. Bond served 20 years in the Georgia State Legislature. In 1968, Bond was nominated for vice president at the Democratic National Convention. But CBS's Dan Rather pointed out from the convention floor that there was no way Bond could make the ballot.
How old are you? I'm 28. And how old is the vice president legally does he have to be by the Constitution? 35, I believe.
Bond told Rather that even if he couldn't run, he really wanted the opportunity to speak out on TV about issues he held dear.
Poverty, racism, war, there really has not been a great deal of free discussion about them, I don't think.
This was classic Bond, always connecting multiple struggles, seamlessly almost, in his work. In the 1970s, Bond helped found another civil rights organization, the Southern Poverty Law Center. In 1998, he became chairman of the NAACP and served in that role for 10 years. All the while, Bond wrote books, taught at several colleges, and became a regular on the lecture circuit. As the rights issues of the day changed, Bond kept up. When black civil rights leadership was slow to push for gay rights in America, Bond called those leaders out, like in this 2012 CNN interview.
They've adopted our songs, we ought to be happy. They've adopted our slogans, we ought to be happy. And when others imitate what we did to gain their rights, we ought to be first in line to say, can I help you? You help me, can I help you?
Bond never really stopped. Just 2 years ago, he was arrested at the White House during a demonstration over the Keystone Pipeline. Some of the protesters used plastic ties to chain themselves to the White House gates. Bond and organizer Bill McKibben ended up in the same police vehicle.
Sitting there in the paddy wagon, talked beautifully about the connection of struggles, the civil rights struggle and the fight for a livable environment and the fight of economic equality and things were all part of the same broad struggle in a very deep way.
A 73-year-old Julian Bond in handcuffs with a stranger, speaking to the theme of his entire life with clarity, that many struggles for rights across the globe are and always have been connected. Sam Sanders, NPR News.
It's starts with some strange letters left for a Beijing cab driver and slowly unravels into a tale of two souls bonded together through time. Susan Barker's novel, The Incarnations, follows the two voices throughout Chinese history as they die, are reborn, and come together in each lifetime. Susan Barker, welcome to the program.
Hi, it's great to be speaking with you.
This is quite the complicated story.
Right, it's set in Beijing 2008, in the months preceding the Olympics, and the main character is this taxi driver called Wang Jun, who lives a quiet life in the east of the city with his wife and daughter, until one day he finds in the sun visor of his taxi an anonymous letter. And in the letter writer states that Wang has had several past lives, and the letter writer has known Wang in each of his past incarnations, and the letter writer is Wang's past life biographer, and it's their duty to reacquaint him with his past incarnations. So other letters follow, recounting Wang's past lives as a eunuch during the Tang Dynasty, a slave during the invasion of Genghis Khan, a concubine during the Ming Dynasty, a fisher boy during the Opium War, and a student during Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution. And in the letters, the letter writer also describes the nature of the relationship they had with Wang. In some cases they're family, sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're lovers, but the relationship's always very complex and conflicted.
To put it mildly.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could read an excerpt for us.
Yes, sure. Let me see. I stood on the curb and watched you drive away. Taxi driver Wang Jun. Driver ID number 394493. 31. Careworn. A smoker of Red Pagoda Mountain cigarettes. The last in your chain of incarnations, like the others selected by the accident of rebirth, the lottery of fate. Who are you, you must be wondering? I am your soulmate, your old friend, and I've come back to this city of 16 million in search of you.
So we're starting here with the driver and this unknown narrator, the Watcher, who is basically stalking him. But this is not the beginning of these characters, these souls. You've just kind of dropped us right into their most recent incarnation. And even though these souls are bonded together, it's not exactly love that is creating that bond. There's a lot of violence in these stories. It seems like this could easily have been written, like a soulmate love story, but you've made it far more emotionally complex and very messy.
Yes, although they're soulmates in a very literal sense, and in some past lives they even love each other, they often come into conflict with each other because of these innate characteristics such as the will to dominate, possessiveness, envy, wrath, that recur in them life after life, that causes them to sometimes behave recklessly and to sabotage their relationship.
Well, the historical scope of this book is truly breathtaking. Mongols, Ming Dynasty, Mao, modern-day polluted China. You basically plop your characters right down in the middle of really extraordinary times. How did you pick and choose?
My process for determining which eras I'd write about was to just read history books that gave a really broad overview of Chinese history. And when I came across a historical figure or a historical incident that was especially interesting to me, ideas for characters and stories would surface.
You've lived in China. Did that experience influence your writing on the country's history?
It definitely influenced my writing on contemporary China, contemporary Beijing. I moved there just before the Olympics, and a lot of the pre-Olympic atmosphere in my neighborhood found its way into the book. Down my street, they were taking down lots of shop signs in Chinese and replacing them with bilingual signs for the tourists. And the neighborhood committee in my apartment complex, they're a group of elderly people who sort of monitor the comings and goings of the neighborhood. They started to wear these armbands saying Olympic security volunteers and carried out door-to-door checks. So that found its way into the book.
Why did you choose to keep all the reincarnations within China?
My grandfather was originally from the south of China before he emigrated to Malaysia pre-World War II, and I wanted to learn more about the history of the country of my ancestors. I knew I wanted a narrative set in contemporary Beijing. I was really interested in the effect of the rapid social and economic change on ordinary citizens in China, but I also wanted to interweave into the main narrative historical stories. And after I've been writing the book for a few months, I realised I could use reincarnation as a narrative device to structure the novel.
Susan Barker, her novel is called The Incarnations, and she's been joining us from our studios in London. Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ask Mad Men and Community star Alison Brie about her big break, and she'll tell you what it wasn't. Her summer working as a children's party clown.
Every time we did a job, even if the job was in Brentwood or Malibu, we always had to drive to Compton first to pick up our suit and do our makeup in this warehouse, and then go get gas like at the nearest gas station dressed fully as Sunny the Clown. People were cool about it. They were just like, "What's up, girl?" And I was like, "What's up?"
7 years later, when Alison Brie auditioned for a new show called Mad Men, she had no idea how big that break would be.
It was on AMC, which had no original content at the time. The role I auditioned for was a one-episode guest star on this show. So at the time, it also was not like, when I get this job, it will change my career trajectory entirely. It was more like, maybe no one will ever see this show, but at least I would have good material for my reel or whatever. So then I auditioned for Matt Weiner and also just a room full of people. The first scene in the audition room was, I think, we finally meet Pete's new wife, who we've heard about. So now she comes on the scene and has found this amazing apartment that she wants to rent that's very expensive. So there's a line about, like, "We can get help, Peter."
But if we put 10% down, that's an entire year's salary.
Sweetheart, we're not in this alone. We're a young couple that needs a little help. And I felt super confident. But 2 weeks went by, almost 2 full weeks, which in television terms is like, you didn't get the job. And I remember being like so devastated that I hadn't heard anything about this job, and like uncharacteristically so, because you audition for a lot of jobs and you don't get most of them. And then the phone rang and I got the job, just out of nowhere.
Don, I'd like you to meet my wife, Trudy Campbell.
Don Draper, nice to meet you.